Paula, a very good evening to you. So, as far as we know, Benny Gantz saying no way that he's going to join hands or hold hands with Benjamin Netanyahu. He wants to do this all by himself. So what happens now?
Well, it really is uncharted territory. We've never had this situation here in Israel, and essentially you've summed it up quite correctly. There was an appeal a couple of hours ago with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making a video in which he urged Benny Gantz, who is the candidate who came in with the most number of seats, to form a unity government with him. Gantz responded with a press conference a couple of hours later, and essentially what we're hearing from the Gantz camp is that, number one, they would consider joining this unity government. Initially, they said without Netanyahu at the head, and later it seems that they're willing to have Netanyahu, but they want some kind of rotating premiership. And Gantz is insisting that he be prime minister first, and this is something that Netanyahu is not going to agree to. It's worth mentioning that Gantz is also highly suspicious of the offer by Netanyahu. Firstly, before Netanyahu made the offer, he signed with his coalition partners, and this is seen as an effort that he is promising them that he'll bring them on board. And Gantz is not going to agree with everyone who Netanyahu has signed with, least of all the ultra-religious parties. And secondly, people are saying, well, if Netanyahu really wanted a unity government, why didn't he just approach Gantz without signing all these other coalition partners as part of his bloc? And part of the answer is that Netanyahu really is just checking out all his options, making sure that none of his traditional allies jump boat and go to Gantz, and also possibly the idea that if it doesn't work, this unity government, he can always blame Gantz and say, well, he being Netanyahu, he offered for a unity government, and it was Gantz who rejected the offer.
And is it understandable, Paula, that Benny Gantz would not want to get into any kind of a partnership with Benjamin Netanyahu? Because, I mean, he's Netanyahu facing those charges of bribery, fraud, breach of trust, basically corruption charges, although he denies any wrongdoing. But you don't really want to have a political partner who might end up, going on trial or end up in jail for something like this.
And that's precisely the point. There is speculation here. I have no confirmation on this. It's just what people are saying. There could be some truth, there could not be some truth, that there is potentially a deal that is being cut behind the scenes in which, if Netanyahu agrees to step down from political office, he could have all his corruption charges dropped. Now, as I say, we don't have any proof as to whether or not that is accurate. I do want to make some points about the corruption charges. Netanyahu faces 3 major corruption charges. At the beginning of next month, he will have a hearing in which he has to convince the courts not to indict him. Now, already the country's Attorney General says he plans to indict Netanyahu. So it's questionable whether Netanyahu can actually convince the courts otherwise. The idea is that had Netanyahu, or indeed if he still becomes the next prime minister, he could potentially, and this is what people think, push for legislation that would afford him some kind of immunity against prosecution. That's probably why he wants to be prime minister, not the only reason, but certainly one of the reasons. The other point is that the Israeli law as it stands says that a sitting leader can be prosecuted. Netanyahu could actually be charged, but he could not be forced to step down because of that. So either way you look at it, it's better for Netanyahu to be prime minister when he faces those corruption charges. That worst case scenario could see him ultimately ending up in prison. As far as Gantz goes, his position up until now has been that he doesn't want Netanyahu, the man in the coalition, because of the corruption charges. But this is politics, and things change almost by the hour. So it remains to be seen whether Gantz is going to remain true to his word.
Okay, so we'll continue to watch the situation there, the aftermath of this election. No real resolution there. Let's see what happens. Thank you very much, Paula Sleer.